All right. Here we are. Take a deep breath. So if you're here watching this video, it may be that you have an inkling that something happened to you, but you don't know. And maybe the people around you tell you, no, it didn't. That is what happened to me. I'm going to go back to the boulders in a minute, but I'm going to zip forward, 8 years. And that's exactly what happened to me. I was in a therapist's office who told me I should bring my mother into therapy because it looked like I had been through incest. And so she asked me to have my mother come into the next session. And my mother agreed. This was in Nashville. My mother lived way out on a farm. And it took like a couple hours to get there. As a crow flew, it would have been probably an hour, but we lived on a small road, really out in the country. And my mother came in, and it was really odd because, I told her what was bothering me and what I thought happened, and I didn't even say much. I didn't describe anything. I just, said the words. And my mother just looked at me and told me she knew that I believed that was the truth. And so and then she left, and I left feeling really, really crazy because I thought, well, I must be making something up, and I have no proof, and here's my own mother telling me that didn't happen, and surely she wouldn't if it did. But it really bothered me because I was the one waking up every morning with these horrible feelings and just this death wish, horrible suicidal ideations. And I was in a relationship, and it was really affecting the relationship. And what was very strange is I took this partner to my parents' farm to meet my parents. And after he met my father, he said, I don't believe what you're saying could be true. And I thought, wow, okay, here's another person. And that is what you may be going through. My dad was a wonderful person in some respects. Wonderful. I loved him very much. He was handsome. He was very intelligent. He became very successful at business. He was charming. All the things that, make people like somebody. And he was likable. And most of him was wonderful. But there was a part of him that wasn't honest, wasn't in his control. There was a part of him, I think, that kind of split off in a dissociative way, not as in another identity. He didn't have now I don't know what they call it, but it wasn't multiple personality or something like that. It was, the case where someone was wrestling with demons. And so I had also inherited those demons, but in the other way. I was the recipient of a lot of behavior in my family that was triangulated. So incest is very triangulated. It's not just the father and the child at all. The other parent is involved, but it's involvement in a way that, I'm going to use that word again, insidious. It is an involvement that is hidden. Everyone knows what's going on. And you may yourself have been in situations like this where something could be happening, and it's happening in front of everybody. But everybody acts like it's not. Now, I have a good example for this. Politics, our government, the stuff that's happening on TV that you see happening that's documented, but then someone will be taken to court or be put in front of Congress or something, and they'll just deny it. Well, that's how it works, the same way. There's incestuousness in probably all organizations because there's power in all organizations. And incest isn't about sex either. Like before I said, just, rape and sexual abuse and sexual violence aren't about sex. They're about power. And it took me a long time to realize that. I was in my late 40s before I was in a group with other women, and I realized, wow, this is actually, I was trying to understand what happened with my father. Why? Why? With both my parents, why would this happen? And it was a power dynamic between them. And I just got caught in the middle. I was like a pawn in that trajectory of blame and shame and violence. And these are not people that weren't taking care of us, or that sort of thing. We had food and clothing and all those things, and they just had their own stuff, and they weren't working it out. So that's my hope in doing this course, that people will work it out. And when I was on that boulder in the cold Mojave at dawn, it was just beautiful outside, and the sky was getting golden as I was standing up there screaming. It was such a paradox. Then I realized, when I got this guy, I got back to the van, got my clothes on, I went back to the van. We drove in silence back to Los Angeles, and he just kind of dropped me off at the door of my apartment. I never saw him again, and I never went to that yoga studio again. And I was just left with that. I didn't know how to process it. I didn't know to get into therapy. This was like the first time I'd ever had any inkling that something really did happen to me as a child, because I saw it. I was given that information from my, whatever you want to call it, my subconscious bubbling up, my higher power, whatever you want to call that, whatever system you have worked out for yourself. You know what I'm talking about. It's similar to something like, okay, when I was a teenager, I had to get up really early to catch the bus to go to school. And I hated the alarm because it had a horrible squeaking. It was before there were good alarms, and there were no iPhones or anything like that. And I didn't want to hear it. So I'd wake up before my alarm every morning, like 5 or 10 seconds. So a part of me was able to hear what I needed and do it. And that is what happens with incest and with child sexual abuse and with rape and all the things that we might not be able to cope with at the moment until we can later get help. But they do bubble up later. And if yours is bubbling up now, I'm going to, in the next video, talk about how I started handling it once it was really bubbling.